Okay, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. Um, this is Wooten High School, but we are welcoming all of our friends from all the other MCPS high schools as well. So if you're joining us from another high school, thank you so much for coming to our session. For those of you who aren't familiar with this webinar series, Wooten High School has a college and career readiness club. And one of the initiatives that they started last year was something called Insight from the Inside, which brings speakers from all different industries and backgrounds to talk about not only what they are currently doing, but what their path was to get there, including what they majored in, what classes they took, whether they had to go to grad school, things like that. And so I am going to introduce Michael, who is the president of our club.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Miss McDonald's our lovely sponsor who's been working with us. I'm sure a lot of the students from Udon have seen all the emails that she's been sending us about like college information, how to apply for stuff, how to get scholarships, and all of the college people who have been coming. She's been helping organize that. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being our sponsor. But today we have Miss Audrey Rutkove. She's been an architect for 20 plus years, and she has been now running her own business for around 11 years, I think. And yeah, so I'll actually just pass it on to her now. And yep, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Michael and Jennifer, for having me tonight, and welcome to everyone who's here. Thank you for joining and listening in um, on my experience in architecture and architecture as a whole, but we'll also talk about other career possibilities as well. So, as Michael mentioned, I have had my own business here in Montgomery County, in Gaithersburg and Rockville. Rutkove Building Consultants. I started it back in January of 2014, but I have been an architect for longer than that. I graduated from college 25 years ago this year, and I've been a licensed architect for over 20 years now. Um, so people might be wondering what it means to be an architect. And it means a lot of different things. I know architect has like a lot of discussion based off of, you could be a information systems architect, all that stuff. But when you want to be an architect, we go back to the building architecture. And architecture as a profession is not the same as like computer architecture. It's, about the built environment and everything around us. So, um, I guess what does an architect, a licensed architect, do? Architects design new schools, they design office buildings, multifamily buildings, both very expensive buildings and affordable housing, community spaces, homes, gyms, swim centers, libraries, and more. They design the built environment. That's what architects do as a whole. Um, they also do renovations to existing spaces like offices, commercial spaces. They turn it over from one tenant to another tenant or a small business owner who wants to start something new. Um, and they also renovate houses. They put additions onto houses. They design schools. They put additions onto schools. Maybe that one day we'll have an architect to design Wooten High School or renovate it as much needed. Um, and they also renovate and um, they put additions on hospitals, airports, and more. Architects work with a team of people to put together a successful project. And that is key. It's a team that brings up any kind of building you see in the built world. I don't know how that went back, but anyways, um, usually there's the client who's the owner or the new business that wants to move into a space or a school that needs their building renovated. And then there's engineers and contractors. Usually architects work as a team with engineers to get a project done. And they have contractors who will build the project, or they have a general contractor who works with all the subcontractors to build a project when it's time for construction. Architects help to go through the building permit process. So not only do we develop an idea with a client, at like with schematic design and coming up with a plan, but we also go through and work with the client to get it through to permitting, to get it approved so that it can be constructed in the field with a contractor, a contracting team. And even then, the architect is still involved. We oversee construction, we make recommendations for improvement, and we also make sure that the drawings that we put together for permitting and design and built construction is what actually gets done in the field. So without an architect overseeing the whole process from the very beginning to the end, you can't ensure that the project is going to get built correctly or with everything that it's supposed to be built if there's no architect on the team. Architects design our built environment and improve the lives of people. Other careers that, um, wait a minute. Okay, never mind. Other careers that go through a similar process would be engineering, interior design, things like that. They're very similar kinds of careers, and they also work with architects to get projects done from schematic through design and then through construction administration. How to become an architect? First of all, you have to finish high school if you're in high school or middle school or wherever you're at in the MCPS system. And then for university, you have two options. You can go get a Bachelor of Architecture, which is a 5-year professional degree, and it needs to be done with a National Association of Architecture Accreditation Board. They need to approve that program, whether it's a master's or bachelor's of architecture, so that you can get licensed down the road. The other option is to go for a 4-year degree, not necessarily in architecture. It could be in something similar like engineering or construction. And then you could go to get a master's of architecture route, which is 4 years undergrad with getting a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts, and then another 2 or 3 years for your Master of Architecture. So it's a longer route if you don't go the 5-year route because it adds another at least 1 or 2 more years to get licensed. Post-graduation, you work in, I don't know why it keeps going back. Post-graduation, you work in an architecture firm. Internship experience at an architecture firm with an IDP program. So basically, you need 3 years experience working in the field with other architects, learning different kind of project types for 3 years, and then you take your exams. I think now you can actually take the exams as you're interning. So I actually did that in California. And I'm going to go over how I got licensed in architecture, which is a little bit different than it was now, because there's fewer exams. It's only 6 exams right now and a supplemental examination by state. Most states I would say have no supplemental exams, but I will say California does have a supplemental exam because there's a lot of earthquakes, and so they have an additional exam if you want to become a licensed architect in California. But in Maryland and Virginia, you don't need to take that additional exam, and that's actually an in-person exam, and it's not just like on the computer. Anyways, after those 6 exams, you become a licensed architect. And then you could either continue working for where you're working in a traditional firm, or you could try to do your own thing, depending on the route you want to take and what interests you. Other fields similar to architecture would be landscape architecture, which is about basically designing parks and recreational areas that are around schools, and also new sports facilities and things like that. I know there's one in Montgomery County in Wheaton that's an RFP is out right now for. Another field similar would be engineering. Civil engineering is a very similar field, but it's more involves the roadways and bridges and other infrastructure that we use every day. Um, Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, are all similar careers, and we work with them every day. I actually consult with engineers all the time on projects, and they actually work with me as a team to get projects done. So day in, day out, I'm working with engineers, including civil engineers. Civil engineers like basically do all the landscape around the building, including roadways and everything like that. Landscape architecture is more vegetation, whereas civil engineering is more the hard surface and structure. Um, Another thing you could do would be interior design, which is more of the interior space and selecting finishes. That's a different certification process and doesn't require as much schooling as architecture. But it's not, it's a very good career to be in as well. And there's many needs for interior design, whether in the commercial sector or residential. Another option would be construction management, or to be a GC, which works with all the architects too, and helps to price out drawings and helps getting things built. They're the people who see our pictures and paper and actually build it out in the field. Um, Sustainability and energy consulting is another kind of alternate field that people can go to as well, which is similar. And they work with architects day in and day out, and so do planners who do urban planning for our cities and all over the country and all over the world. And as I mentioned before, all require different college master degrees certification processes. So you could look these up and find out what the requirements are to get a license to practice any of these other fields. But back to architecture. So how I became an architect, because I'm giving you my story, is I am actually a graduate from high school graduate from 30 years ago. I didn't go to Wooten High School. I went to Mamaroneck High School in New York. And I graduated from there, and then I went to college. And I knew back then when I applied, I had a portfolio and I did a lot of artwork and other design in high school. And I had to submit that for my architecture portfolio. And I sent it to a number of schools, but I ended up choosing Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, in Troy, New York. And I was there for 5 years because I went the Bachelor of Architecture route. And I also received a Bachelor of Science in Building Science at the same time. That I guess you could say I got that my 4th year, but I received both at my 5th year graduation. I had a great time at RPI. It was a great school. So good that my kid is now there in their freshman year. So it worked out good for us. I really did do like RPI. It was a good experience. And I should mention, I lived in Rome for a semester, uh, uh, the fall of my senior year. So we studied architecture there and did a lot of different investigations on the history of Rome, and it was a lot of fun. Post graduation, I moved to California. I lived just outside of LA in Pasadena and worked on a lot of new multifamily, new construction projects. So um, a lot of senior housing projects actually. And this one right here that I have a picture of was 3 blocks from the Altadena fire that took place about, I guess it is 6 months ago now, or 9 months ago going on in January. This building is still there and it still houses many seniors. And it's fun to go back to California and see my project anytime I'm back in that area. It was a great firm to work for. I was there for about 3 years, and then I moved to Maryland. When I moved to Maryland, I worked for Winsec and Associate Architects in Gaithersburg. They're not there anymore. Now they're in DC. And I did a lot of great projects there, including multi-family affordable housing projects like this one, Renaissance Square Artist Housing, which is in Hyattsville, Maryland. And I worked there until 2008. So I was there for over 5 years. And then I did some other stuff. I worked for Housing Opportunities Commission for a few years, where I was actually an owner's rep for 3 years. And I also worked for another small firm for a year. And then I decided at the end of 2013 to go out on my own and do my own thing. And I already had a client that was going to give me some work, so that was helpful. And I went out on my own and I haven't looked back. But I should mention, yes, in 2005, while I was working at Winsec in Gaithersburg, I got my my first architecture license. And back then it was 9 exams. Now it's only 6. So it's gotten much better and it's easier to get through. They've combined a lot of the old sections like lateral forces and structures, I think now is 1 versus what it was when I took it back in the day. Back 20 years ago, it was a different can of worms. And yeah, and I've been working at RBC LLC since 2014. I am the boss. I do it all. So it's not always easy, but somehow I make it work. This is now just pretty much a summary of what my firm has done over the past almost 12 years. My firm is a women-owned full-service architecture and construction consulting firm based in Montgomery County, serving the states of Maryland and Virginia. And we started in 2014. This is all a summary of kind of what I've done. The projects here on the right are actually projects that I completed somewhat recently. This project up here is a community center based in Rockville. This is a new 12-unit rebuild in Gaithersburg. And this is a home addition in Gaithersburg, literally right around the corner from me. Some other projects I've worked in the past are this is a project in College Park, Maryland. It was an old farmhouse with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath that I enlarged to include a spiral staircase to a really cool recreational space above, and really like quadrupled the size of someone's house in College Park, and they're really enjoying their space now. This is another addition I've done in Alexandria, where we put on a new porch and enlarged their whole carport area to create a large kitchen and den space, and we redid all of their bathrooms. And this is the project that's literally right here, that we put a 2-story addition onto a home above an existing garage to create an accessory dwelling unit above the garage for a family member to live in. And we also included a spiral staircase to a loft space in the accessory dwelling unit. It was just additional space and it made it work, and it gave them a lot of extra room. There's an office upstairs and a bedroom. This project is the picture looks familiar because it's my Saybrook Apartments Gaithersburg project. This is a 12-unit rebuild. There was a large fire, and RBC did the permit drawings and design drawings to help rebuild the project. And now it's occupied. The fire was started from something related to something out on an existing deck. They actually do have fireplaces in the units. We put back electric fireplaces because I think the client was scared they were going to have another fire there. This project I just completed last year, and there was a ribbon cutting ceremony also done earlier this year, and it's the David Skull Community Center in Rockville, Maryland, and it's an affordable housing community. And this is basically their community space that serves many purposes for the community, which includes having different camps there in the summer. They have an after-school program there. They rent out this space for different events. I actually hosted an event there for a networking group I'm associated with. It worked out really well, and the client is really happy. And they also have a commercial kitchen now to host different kinds of events and to make food for the people who live in the community. This is another resource center project in Silver Spring where we took an existing unit offline and created a space for the tenants to use to help get used to cooking in the United States, because a lot of the residents come from all over the world. So they were looking to have a space that would help people get used to living in the United States. This is a multifamily building that has one unit for this. It's a smaller project. I also do a lot of tenant fit outs for different clients. This is actually some of the most fun stuff I do is I help new business owners create the spaces that they're going to work in, or have employees work there for them. But um, one of the spaces is a Bethesda Hot Works workout facility. I do a lot of workout facilities. This Hot Works workout facility is in use, and the contractor did a great job on all the details with the angular structure that's within the existing building. The building was built about probably now 5 years ago. This space was unoccupied when the client took it over. So we have to build it from nothing to really create a space usable for them. And so it's been occupied now, I think, for 2 years. They're enjoying it. Another workout studio I did recently was Powerhouse Studio in the city of Gaithersburg. Again, the tenant space was empty before. It used to be, I believe, years ago, I actually worked near this space, and it was like a grocery store or like a convenience store of sorts. And anyways, it's been empty for a while, and this new client wanted to relocate from another space, and they opened Powerhouse Studio in Old Town, really bringing the existing Old Town Gaithersburg back to life. So it's good to see spaces getting used in buildings that have been empty for a while. I also did this Wildwood Manor Swim Center bathhouse renovation and weatherization in Bethesda last year. For its the users of the facility wanted to have a gender neutral bathroom, and we were able to make it work within the existing confines of the space with reconfiguring some of the utility spaces. And they're really enjoying their new space. We also weatherized it, so now they can use it during the colder months. They have a heated pool, and apparently the walkway to the pool is also heated, so it's pretty cool. Next one. I also do lots, like as I mentioned before, I do multifamily renovations. This project is a project in Virginia where we renovated an existing set of built units to take them up. We took them offline and redesigned them and got permits to put in new finishes to help lease out the units better. RBC's current projects in planning and construction. Okay, so I have a number of multifamily projects that are under construction. One is this 11-unit multifamily rebuild in Prince George's County, Maryland. That's in permitting right now, and it's in review. I'm doing a church renovation in Bethesda. I'm working with the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers on this. They're actually the ones leading the charge on it. I am assisting them with all of the architectural elements to get a building permit. So there's going to need to be some new accessibility features that we're incorporating into the church to help make it more user friendly for the people who go there. I'm doing a 2-story addition in Silver Spring for a single family home, and I'm doing many tenant fit outs. One of them is in Virginia, Manassas. It's actually 2 tenant fit outs for a space in an existing building in Manassas, Virginia. Engineering firm actually is going to be moving in there. And also I'm doing one right here in King Farm, let me go back. a King Farm stretch lab facility is going in. This is gonna just started and it's in permit. It's not even in permitting. It's in design right now. It's in my office working on it. Same with the church. Both projects should be out for permitting and pricing sometime in November. And that is it for this presentation. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think the way we'll be doing questions is if anyone has any questions, they can just write it down into the chat and post them. We'll give people a couple minutes, but I can also lead with some follow-up questions to allow people some time to think. So,
Okay.
um, the first follow-up question that I had for you was you mentioned that you had to work a lot with like civil engineers and mechanical engineers. I was kind of wondering if you could kind of expand on that difference between an architect and a civil engineer so people can kind of understand like if they're on the fence between the two, what they would
Right.
do.
I think that's a very fine distinction. I actually was also thinking, do I want to be an architect or do I want to be a civil engineer? Right? I think it's a hard thing to determine what, your desire is. I will say for me, I'm civil engineering is it's more it's less about working with interiors of spaces and more about working with features on the site. So civil engineers, I mean, like I was mentioning before, do a lot of engineering of infrastructure. So road design, they do bridge design, they work with architects. Like I sometimes need a civil engineer. Like for this project I did in in Silver Spring, the resource center, we had a civil engineer to do all of the walkways to make sure that the slopes were right going out to the parking lot because it was a very exact measurement between the two and stuff like that. But generally speaking, yeah, civil engineering does more of the site work versus architects who do more of the building work. They locate where the utility lines are, right? They orchestrate, WSSC and how it's going to come from the building to the street to get connected. Civil engineers do a lot of like the infrastructure associated with the actual building.
That sounds interesting. Yeah. And I see a couple questions rolling in, so I'll
Yeah.
start just reading them off. So the first question was from Pranika, and she says that I'm enrolling in a dual program in Montgomery College, and I signed up for civil engineering because there is no architecture option, and my second choice was business. Will I still be able to build buildings because I'm more interested in building in buildings more than roads?
Huh. Okay. So it's a dual program and you're still in high school, right? Is that it? Am I reading that right?
So a lot of times the dual programs, they're like associate degrees. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that this person is doing a associate degree in civil engineering, wondering if that that education that they're getting can transfer into building actual buildings and not say public infrastructure.
Right. I would say either way, you're not going to become an architect in the first 2 years of college anyways. So if you're, you know, if you're interested in building buildings and this project doesn't have architecture, I would say definitely consider after you go this route to do an undergraduate in architecture once you go through that 2 year program, and then you can get a 2 or 3 year master's degree based, depending on the timeline. um because that would you're still getting a good education learning about civil engineering, and it definitely is part of the architecture field. Like it's not like you're coming from business or like something totally unrelated, like you want to be a teacher or something. So you're learning a lot about infrastructure, which is architectural, so it's not bad to get that education before you go to architecture school. You're not wasting your time.
Yeah. So I think that's good for people to know that you
Right.
can still learn
Right.
some
Oh, and
some
trust me,
things.
it'll be good because you'll have more experience and you'll understand the details of road construction and all the other things. So it'll be helpful.
Yeah. This next question comes from Clarice, and they asked that they noticed that you mentioned putting together an art portfolio in high school. As someone who is also art oriented, they were wondering how you personally express your artistry in architecture.
That is a very good question. So it really depends. Architecture and art are they're intertwined, right? And if you want to be a big design architect, it, you really have to work with the client you're working with, right? And you want to be a good architect and listen to them and understand their needs because that's being a good architect. So sometimes you can't incorporate heavy design or art into projects that don't need it to begin with. Um, but putting together an portfolio in high school, not all schools apparently require it, but a lot do still. And I know for architecture programs, they like to see art versus like hard drawing design, like buildings in a drafting program. They want to see how creative you are with a pen and pencil, or art, with paint or some sort of clay. They really like to see your creativity versus just doing drawings in a drafting class. So I definitely think taking art classes in high school is a good way to create a portfolio to get into architecture school.
And I guess the next question is from Aminata, and they asked, what does your day-to-day usually look like when you're working?
That's a really good question. Okay, so that's the thing about architecture. No 2 days are alike. Like, it's not like I'm checking people out at a store, or I mean, every day there's always different things happening. It depends on the project I'm working on. Our RBC, like, I work on different kinds of things. Not only do I do permit drawings, but I also go to project sites and I oversee projects on behalf of others. So, I yesterday I was at a new construction of a 90 unit building in Wheaton, Maryland, off of Boulevard, overseeing new construction project. And then earlier in the day, I was at a breakfast for a nonprofit because I work with affordable housing entities. So it really depends on the day. Today, I was working on a code analysis for my new workout studio in King Farm. Um, the days definitely vary depending on whatever project I need to get done at that time. But then there's always projects that are ongoing. So I have to leave the office to go see something like a project I'm working on. So it's not, no 2 days are alike in architecture.
Yeah, and I guess what a follow-up to that is, since you are, you have your own business and you're kind of self-employed and you've been doing
Right.
that for a while now, could you kind of like, what are the differences with between like working like for yourself versus like working for a firm, and like how do you find that clientele as a business owner?
That's a good question. So um, I will say, having a network of people that you've worked with before definitely helps you get additional, like, new projects. Um, being working for a firm, usually you don't have to worry about you just get paid every 2 weeks. I mean, usually, hopefully, I know federal government right now, unfortunately, is not having that, but you get paid and you don't think about, oh, how am I getting paid? Did I invoice? Did I send bills to my clients so I can get paid? Or are they going to pay me? So there's a lot of questions in architecture where you have to, like, go back and think about, like, what's my next project? What am I going to be doing a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now? Because you always have to have a steady stream of different kinds of things you're working on. So it's a good question, but like I said, networking and working with clients that you work with again and again is like good to have repeat business. So some of clients I work with again and again are projects like uh clients that basically need me to design something quick, or they need permit drawings for a building that had a fire in it. A lot of those projects are good because they're like, it's ongoing work that you can get, and it's you know, you can get the permit, you know you need it. But there's always new clients that come to me with small projects, that I love working with small business owners, and I like to help them see their project through and get it built and have them making money off of, you know, the space that they bought or they're renting out. I also just recently, like, I didn't even show this one project, but one project I know is a client who's a contractor. She's a GC and she's used me before. And she just bought a space in Charles County. And I went there, measured it with my engineers, and her project's under construction now. She has the sign outside and she's creating her own space for one of her many different companies. She's a GC, but she has like so many other companies. And this is one of her spaces that she works in. So I was grateful to help her out and design it for her.
Yeah, and I guess on a similar note, we have a question from Fanta who asked, how do architects work with architectural engineers? If architects do more design, do architectural engineers get to do any of the design themselves?
That is a really good question. So architectural engineering, I know the term and I know people have said this, but I'm like, I don't know an architectural engineer personally. So I don't know honestly what to say about architectural engineering, because um they might actually work with um material fabricators. That's my feeling, is what architectural engineering is, which is like millwork design. It's getting into the nitty-gritty of spatial material design for different
Hmm.
elements, which is stuff that architects specify on projects or design and layout and they get it built. But it's not someone I work with every day. Like if during construction, what I would do, or like if there was a detail for some sort of wall piece that I was approving, the architectural engineer would submit a drawing for me to review to make sure it meets the criteria for what was in the original documents for construction. So that's how I would work with an architectural engineer. I don't really work with them day in and day out, except that I might see their drawings and provide comments and feedback based off of when I get a submittal during the construction phase of work.
Yeah, and I noticed that you were mentioning a lot about this like concept drawings versus permit drawings. So I
Right,
was wondering with I'm assuming concept drawings is kind of like more of like your perspective and trying to map out the client's like
right.
view of the space. So I was
So
wondering, how do you balance drawing or how do you balance like your own personal view of how the space should be with the client's view, and then making sure that that works with, I guess, codes for architecture, which I'm assuming is the permit drawing.
yeah, permit drawings is basically following code so that you can get the permit. Otherwise, they'll shut the building down. So schematic design and design development is basically the initial part of construct of drawings to get your client on board with what you're proposing to build before you start detailing it out for permitting and getting it ready for construction. So schematic design is really getting the client on board with your ideas before you detail the ideas. So you get them to buy into the design, they say okay, then you detail it and get it ready for construction and permitting. So um it's really it's like a three-phase thing where you have schematic design, design development, and then construction documents. Um Sometimes things get intertwined there in the middle. Like you could start working on some things, especially if you know the client is okay with something. Like I just got the okay yesterday for the layout that I was proposing for the stretch studio in King Farm. So now I'm in the process. I tweaked the drawings, got them ready to go, sent them to my engineers so they can engineer the drawings as I continue detailing little elements here and there in the permit set.
And then I guess since you're drawing these things that are like permit drawings, do you have to renew your license every few years?
Yes, that's very true. Very good question, Michael. Yes, architects, every jurisdiction has dates for when they're due. So Maryland, I think in every state it's 2 years. I don't know if it's different. I mean, at least the states that I know of are 2 years. And every 2 years you have to pay a fee to get it renewed, but you also need 24 hours of educational CEUs, like continuing education units, where you have documents where you show that you took classes to like increase your education and awareness of different things that have changed in technology and architecture and skid resistance of floors, like all different elements of design. Some of them are life safety, health, they're LS, they have to meet a certain requirement in order for the state of Maryland to approve it. In fact, they just audited me last year. I never had anyone ask, "Did you?" And I was like, "Oh, I do have all my 24 credit hours. Here they are." And they reviewed them, and so, but I'm licensed still in Maryland and in Virginia, but sometimes they ask for the backup. So you have to do your continuing education every year.
So I guess we have a couple more questions.
Yes.
So I think we'll ask three more questions. And the first one being, do you often use softwares like AutoCAD to make your designs?
Yes, I do. Good question. Sorry, I didn't really bring up the software. I personally do use AutoCAD, like for drawings, for design drawings, I use AutoCAD. I have people sometimes render projects if needed. I don't do that software. I'm a sole proprietor, so for me it's difficult to do everything. So I don't do uh, this renderings all the time because that would be very time consuming. So I would outsource that. But yeah, I use AutoCAD day in, day out. I use PowerPoint for this lovely presentation, but for other things as well. I use Outlook, I use Excel, all of those things to help my designs come through and get things done.
Yeah. The next question, I guess it's a bit of a different twist on the civil and structural engineering. So does it help as a aspiring architect to have that background in civil or structural engineering
Yeah,
in a
I
way
definitely right. I
for
don't I
pay?
mean, as far as demand pay, I mean, I think having an undergraduate degree, if you said you wanted to go get a master's in architecture after, yes, it would definitely be helpful to have a background in civil or structural engineering. Structural, especially because I think a lot of architects don't, like we all learn structures in college and we all take the structures exams, but I always hire my structural engineers for every project that requires structure because um, RBC doesn't want to be liable for a building to fall down, right? So it's always good to have your structural engineer. So yes, I think it's very helpful, and you could work as a structural engineer and also give feedback for designs and help get buildings built. So there's a lot of avenues within the field of architecture and construction and structure and engineering that are very similar, and we all work together.
That's great.
Yes.
And I guess we'll end on a more, I guess, fun question. What can you tell us about your the most fun project that you've ever had to work on?
Oh my gosh, that's like such a hard question. The most fun project I've ever had to work on. I don't know. I like a lot of projects. I think fun projects are projects where the team works well together. And when
Mm,
a team works well together, it creates fun. Like you have a fun time building it and it's easy and you enjoy the project. I'd like to think of all my projects as being fun. Some are more fun than others because the client's like easy to work with and they're just willing to make it go well and just want to get it done. So I did a food pantry project, which is not in these slides a few years ago. That was fun because they gave me they said, oh, just do whatever you want, like just show what you want. But it's good actually to have people give, um, if they have a budget, they know what products they want. It also helps to work with that because there's a set of standards and you just have to work to what they need. And that makes it fun because it's like putting together a puzzle. I will say every project at the beginning of the project and figuring out the layout of a space is like figuring out a puzzle. Like if you like to solve a puzzle, it's that initial part of going into a space and figuring out what it looks like and what you're going to do. And I will say every project has a lot of fun parts to it. So, I mean, I will say probably some of my favorite projects were my multifamily projects back in the day. But those are also really hard and it takes a long time to see them from one point to another because they take like years to get from
Wow.
permitting through design. Whereas my projects, a lot of the time, they're much quicker. You could design it and next thing you know, it's under construction 2 months later. So there's fun aspects of architecture everywhere.
That's a very diplomatic, but it's a good answer.
I'm trying to make it diplomatic. I don't want to say anything's better than anything else.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you really enjoy architecture, which I'm sure a lot of people here can see your passion. But
Right. Oh, I see this as far as yeah, no, I think it's a great career to get into. Um, obviously there's always drawbacks like architects, especially in architecture school, work many hours. I know my kid has a friend in the architecture program now as a freshman at RPI, and I actually was there a few weeks ago to visit. And I was trying to help them realize whether or not they still wanted to be an architect. And they had drive and they had mission. And I said, you should, if you have that kind of drive and desire to do what you want to do, then you should stay in the architecture program because architecture school is difficult. And then another thing to keep in mind with architecture is just the cyclical cycles of the economy are very um, they're sometimes the job market for architects can be hit or miss depending on when you're hitting it. So like I know depending on the economy there might be a lot of jobs for architects out there and then sometimes there isn't because everything is high, costs are high and no one's building anything or so it really depends on the time, but if you like architecture you should stick with it.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for your insights. I think a lot of people here appreciate hearing from both a business owner and a architect that has a lot of experience. So
No,
thank you so much.
no problem. Thank you for having me tonight.
Yeah. And for the SNHS members, I'll be taking a picture right now of all the attendees, but if you're still tuned in, I know some people might have like maybe had to use the bathroom, but if you could raise your hand like right now so that it shows up in the participant list, it'll be easier for the officers to mark you down. Okay, so I'll give people just like a quick second to do that. Okay, sounds good. Okay, we will try to make sure that everyone was marked for coming, but thank you so much for all the attendees. And again, thank you so much, Ms. Rutkove, for coming and speaking with us.
No problem. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye.